more experience, or more often than not, you just don't hear anything. And that extra semester, quote unquote, that I had came and went, graduated, walked, still didn't have anything. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And finally I stumbled on a posting for this broadcast internship, not paid, but, they put you up in a house, like you have to pay for utilities, but a broadcast internship with the Rockford Ice Hogs of the American Hockey League, which is essentially AAA affiliate for an NHL team. And that's the affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. So I'm like, this is something. Mike Peck, who's a legend in Rock Vegas, he opened the door, my first door into the real world. My grandparents were, half hour, 45 minutes away from Rockford. They weren't far at all. So there was like some level of comfort despite going to a place that at the time was like top 10 in the United States in murders per capita. Mom was not thrilled about that. But it was the opportunity that I needed to, something different than I thought. It was radio based. The broadcasts were, they weren't, broadcast on local TV. Social media was around, but it wasn't what it is today. And same could be said with digital media. So I took it upon myself to try and really build out the social platforms, the Twitter especially, and digital content for the YouTube page, which unfortunately is still up there. So it's around if you need a good laugh. And again, working with Pecker, like I just learned so much from him. Got to call a couple of games. I'm so happy those tapes don't exist. But yeah, it was an amazing season. It was just a 1-season deal. And during that time, I was still applying to get into local television. And again, it was the same thing. No, sorry, need more experience, or just didn't hear anything. And so by the time the internship ended, my girlfriend, now wife, was working in Grand Junction, Colorado. Shouts to the JUCO World Series. And I was like, I'm going to go home. I'm going to work for the Angels and Ducks again, part of the game day staff, and I'll just have to figure it out. Like, maybe I'm just not cut out for this. Maybe I'm not good enough. And then when I was hanging out at her place in Colorado, she was at work one day. I finally heard back from a local station in Eugene, Oregon, another place I'd never considered even looking up before. And long story short, I had a phone call with Jake Zivin, who was the sports director at the time, assistant news director Sean Shafi, news director Mark Hatfield, and within a week, I was driving up the 5 from California, from home in Huntington Beach up to Eugene, and the rest is kind of history, I guess.
So you're there in Eugene, sports reporter. KEZI TV. This is peak Oregon sports too. I mean, yeah, Marcus Mariota, your guy, going crazy with Chip Kelly with the Ducks, and of course Michael Conforto with the Beavers, just taking the world by storm. So it must have been exciting when you go into a town with no professional sports, but college-wise during this time you're there. Amazing teams.
Durst, I think that first and foremost, the Pacific Northwest is the most slept on region of the country to me. It's gorgeous up there, and the communities of Eugene and Corvallis, that's special. That's a special spot for me forever. But you're right. Like I got there, and the first thing we had to work was the Olympic trials. And it was like a Justin Gatlin press conference, I think was my first on camera story. Ashton Eaton stole the show, with the record that he set at the trials before going on to Olympic fame. Track and field, obviously huge. Tracktown USA, Eugene, Oregon. But you're right, with Oregon and Oregon State within 40 minutes of each other, Pac-12 athletics. And I was so lucky to work with Jake and Eric Elkin, Joe Hathaway, our producer, for a number of years, because you're right, we had stars. The college football game I worked was Marcus's first start for the University of Oregon. And then I was primarily on the Beaver beat, and the Oregon State had a, relatively awesome season. Had they beat Stanford late in the year, they would have gone to the Rose Bowl, but they had a couple of choke losses that season. But it was, it was like Brandon Cooks, Sean Mannion, the third-round pick. Marcus Wheaton was the third-round pick. They had Isaac Seumalo, now a Super Bowl champion with the Philadelphia Eagles. He was on that team. And yeah, you hit Big Fourths. Michael Conforto, Oregon State baseball was loaded. They loaded. It was Michael Conforto, Matt Boyd, Andrew Moore was in the show with the Mariners. Ben Wetzer was another outstanding pitcher. I mean, they were so talented. A couple runs at Omaha. Got to go to Omaha one time. So that was 2.5 years that still stick with me. I'm still on a text thread with Jake and Eric, keep in touch, and relive the glory days and see all these guys. Jordan Poyer, star safety for the Buffalo Bills now. He was at Oregon State. How could I forget? Just talking about all these guys that we used to cover now doing big things in their respective sports world.
So a lot of stars come out of Eugene doing big things, none bigger than you. You're then making the jump to coming east, coming to New York City. Bleacher Report. How did that come about?
Oh my gosh, that was a whirlwind. I remember I was driving back from a girls' high school basketball game in Lebanon, Oregon. Lebanon, not Lebanon, even though it's spelled the same. And agent got linked up with an agent at the time, and within 6 months, I was essentially gone from Eugene. I had an audition at Bleacher 1 week, and then the very next week I had an audition at a local station in Houston. Ironically enough, the one that I mentioned Justin Stapleton is at now, my former roommate in Eugene. But the Bleacher Report audition was a trip. Chris Sims, who you know well from your time at BR, was my mock analyst, and I was nervous as hell. Did not sleep the night before. You fly from Eugene to New York City, and you stay in a midtown hotel, and you're thinking, wait, there's no way I could make the jump from market 121 or whatever it was in Eugene to New York City. Like, this is just not going to happen. But I'm still nervous as hell, prepping for these segments, and I must have been like the cheapest candidate for the job, because that's the only way I can explain getting that thing. Like, the audition went great, it did, and then I went to Houston and was just so confident and crushed that one. I honestly thought like I was going to be working in Houston, and then I was leaving the Houston airport after the audition, and I was like, yeah, I think it went well. And my agent at the time, she said, yeah, well, Bleacher is offering. And I'm like, what? And it's all thanks to Adam Lefkoe. He was represented by the same agency at the time, and kind of gotten the drop on the auditions. And I guess the agency sent over a bunch of tapes, and mine was among them. And that's why it's relationships, it's timing. Yes, you do need to be prepared and work hard on your craft, but this business, it's after I went through my story, a couple of years of not hearing anything or being told essentially that I wasn't ready or good enough to have a job in the business, to then having this happen. Like, it was just really hard to comprehend. But Bleacher changed my life, because I always say, like, that is where I found my voice as a broadcaster. And that's why I'll always look at the people that I work with there as family.
So you mentioned two of them, but are you surprised with how big of a star Adam Lefkoe and Chris Sims have become on a national scale right now?
Absolutely not. Not surprised at all. Quite frankly, if it weren't for a couple of jabronis at Bleacher Report, they would have been bigger deals even sooner. But some folks there did not have the appreciation or the vision for the talent that they had on their roster, so to speak, just speaking frankly and honestly, because Lefko has charisma that nobody else in this world has. And Sims is perhaps the hardest working athlete I've ever met. His dedication to his craft, and people may not like his opinion. I understand that. That's not what this is about. It's just about how hard he has worked to hone his voice as an analyst coming off of his playing career. And what they did together with the Sims and Lefko podcast. Shout to producer Josh Fendrick, good friend. And what they did that by themselves for the longest time, because again, they didn't get the respect or appreciation from the folks in charge there early enough. And by the time they did, it was too little too late in my opinion. But I'm just so beyond thrilled to watch both of them now, like just turning on NBC every week and seeing Sims wearing a suit, 1, weird, 2, awesome. And then Lefko killing it, still at BR and now at TNT. It's just, I feel so proud. Not that they like my pride means anything to them, but like I'm just so proud.
Yeah, and obviously we are going all in on gambling now. And when I was there, I had the opportunity to work on a gambling show with Andrew Hershkowitz, and look how far things have come there now. But at Bleacher Report, you were really, and Bleacher Report were the first, place to really, and I think this helped them do interactive shows. Had a really good time working the Facebook Lives with you, and things became very interactive there. That's where the birth of your whiteboard came into play, and you really continued with the interactive stuff with the Facebook and YouTube games, and of course the chatting cage at MLB. But just looking back on that era, how crucial do you think it was to the media landscape to really make things a little more interactive with the fans?
Oh, I mean, that was a game changer. To use the cliche, and I still, honestly, I still am not sure that the industry has the proper respect for social and digital content. I think that there's a lot of folks who are stuck in the past of how things are. But we should be breaking down the fourth wall and doing that a lot more. And Bleacher, that was our job. It was to kind of reach through the screens, and for whether it was a phone or a laptop or a computer, and bring the people inside the studio with us and make them a part of the show. We had characters, Durst, like like we had commenters who would schedule. I still hear from them.
Can't forget
which is
Phil
so crazy, but so cool.
NFL draft expert.
I mean, just he's on the Mount Rushmore of
real name Michael Rochman. He also is the NFL draft insider for this website, WGSports.com. So check out his mock draft. I mean, this guy would come on after his class and be like, "Sorry guys, sorry I'm late. Here's my 32 pick first round mock draft." And then we go ahead and build a graphic card for him. And he was definitely a Mount Rushmore of commenters. Oh. No question. But that's what made it cool. I mean, Felder and I, like, it was like a month ago, we got a tweet and it was like, your Facebook Lives, like, were the reason I got into Bleacher and the content and your guys' live shows and what we did for the draft. That's a huge feather in our cap. It's a huge point of pride for me looking back, because I think we were part of the tip of the sword, and it was a small part, but we were part of it because there was a huge team, the production behind the scenes from Pelly and Gabe Gomez and all that crew. But Durst, enough talking about me. Like, I think if there was a way for you to share with your viewers, your listeners, the most epic open to a Bleacher Report Facebook Live ever, Matt Camp's entrance, led by a handful of bodyguards, including now the world famous Connor J. Rogers on Twitter, and
and yourself. I believe Jake Simperman as well, and George. Yeah.